An invocation led by Past President Carlo Capria, Chief of Strategy and Innovation with the City of Fort Worth, followed by our national anthem played by Past President Doug Briley, Fractional CMO and Marketing Consultant of Douglas Briley Consulting.
Please pray with me. Oh God, as we gather in the fellowship of Rotary, we are thankful for your blessings and for the guiding principles that bring us here today. In days of uncertainty and strife, we think of Rotary's four-way test. We cannot help but think of how different things might be if the goals of truth, fairness, goodwill, friendship, and benefit for all were adopted by our city, our nation, and indeed our world. As we strive to live out these ideals in our businesses and in our daily living, may we each do our part to bring life, liberty, and happiness and peace to our small corner, even as we join our efforts with fellow Rotarians around the world. Bless our meeting and our community, and together we pray, amen.
Thank you, Carlo and Douglas. Now, here to welcome our guests, please welcome our own Angelica Ramsey, Superintendent of Fort Worth ISD.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, guests, for being here. As I call your name, if you would please rise so that we can acknowledge you and thank you for being with the Rotary today. The first guest we have is Catherine Smith, guest of Shana Saldana. She's getting food. Our next guest is Wesley Kirk, guest of Anna Zeta. Gina Scholl is here, guest of past President David Campbell. Amy Razor is here, guest of Wesley Gentle. Tamara Payne is here, guest of Wesley Gentle. Patricia Ward is here, guest of Wesley Gentle. John Kirk is joining us today, guest of Corey Harris. Nancy Mitchell is the guest of J.R. Labby. Molly Woodbridge is the guest of Wesley Gentle. Kennedy Kays is the guest of past President David Campbell. Grant and Gracie Goldman are guests of Elliott Goldman. Madeline Van Haverlin is the guest of Greg Carter. Denisha Crow is the guest of Jeff Postel. Amy Howell is the guest of Zoran Gutik. And finally, John Nichols is the guest of President Rebecca Montgomery. Thank you and welcome all.
Thank you, Angelica. That was perfect. Now let's take a moment to thank our wonderful sponsor. We have a great sponsor program, and Casa Mañana is our sponsor of the day. Casa Mañana Theater has produced professional Broadway and children's theater in Fort Worth for over 65 years. Their Broadway Children's Theater and Reed Cabaret Theater productions are seen by nearly 140,000 people annually, and over 100,000 school children attend its children's theater productions each year. Thank you again to Casa Mañana. It's that time to recite our four-way test. Some of you may wonder, what is the four-way test, especially our guests here today? The four-way test is one of the world's most widely printed and quoted statements of business ethics. It was created in 1932 by Rotarian Herbert J. Taylor when he was asked to take charge of a company that was facing bankruptcy. There's a challenge there. Upon creating this four-way test, Rotarian Herbert knew what he had to do. He had to live up to this before asking individuals in his company to do the same. He placed this little test under the glass top of his desk, determined to try it out for a few days before talking to anyone else in the company about it. Unfortunately, he had a very discouraging experience and almost threw it in the trash. This four-way test was almost discarded, and there's a good chance it would not be here today if it had been done so. The first day, as he checked everything that passed over his desk with the question, is it the truth? He had not realized how often and how far the company was from the truth. How many untruths appeared in their literature, letters, advertising. We're the best. We're the most experienced. We're excellence. It took Rotarian Herbert over 60 days of faithful, constant effort, striving to live up to the four-way test, still with some tough days, before he had felt he made some progress and was more qualified to talk to those team members about it. This is a roadmap for how we here as Rotarians conduct our lives, not just each other during the hour between bell rings on Fridays, but in every interaction. Thank you all for all you do. Now, please join me in reciting the four-way test, as you can see it on the screen. First, second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and benefit? And fourth, will be beneficial to all concerned. Thank you, everyone. Great job. Now it is that time. Please welcome your newscaster, Michelle Krim, President, Dynamic Development Strategies.
I feel as welcome as a fact checker at a, never mind. Do we have the slides for newscast by chance? They're coming up. Hard-working team. No. So, as you know, this is Friday the 13th. So welcome to a special edition of the Strange Unusual Friday the 13th newscast. That's pretty strange. It is not the group. It is the technology gremlins at work. We'll go ahead and just get started then. Oops, I think it's coming. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, claps, right? All righty. All right. So, since there's no political news this week, let's start with entertainment. Yes, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. The juice is loose. 36 years, seriously, 36 years after the original. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, whoops, hits theaters. and in the opening weekend jolts the box office with a $110 million opening. You know, it's not surprising. Beetlejuice has great hair and a crazy laugh. Although nothing quite says life of the party like being dead for 600 years and still in the spotlight. Talk about ghosting your social calendar. All right, let's keep it up. Speaking of death, we got some bad blood. A woman's obituary has gone viral for the brutal honesty and the brief recap of life. I quote, Florence Flo Harrelson, 65, formerly of Chelsea, died on February 22nd, 2024, without family by her side due to burnt bridges and a wake of destruction she left in her path. Florence did not want an obituary or anyone to know that she died. That's because, even in death, she wanted those she terrorized to still be living in fear, looking over their shoulders. So this isn't so much an obituary, but a public service announcement. End quote. Wow. Okay, that's fair warning. Like Beetlejuice, say her name 3 times, she might come back to haunt you. All right, more tales from the crypt. Wells Fargo, together we go far. A Wells Fargo employee at a corporate office in Arizona clocked into what would be her last shift ever on a Friday morning. Her body was found 4 days later at her cubicle desk, where she died sometime during the weekend. According to the Temple Police Department, talk about a dead-end job. But wait, there's more. A yoga studio in California introduces snake yoga, incorporating live pythons into stationary yoga poses to help participants overcome their fear of snakes. I told you, strange and unusual. The studio ensures safety by handling the pythons only during the non-moving parts of the class, blending yoga practice with snake exposure. Ah, yes, nothing says inner peace like wrapping a python around your neck while trying to hold the downward dog pose. Yes, you too can own a croissant that's actually a lamp. This one has people throwing shade. Yep, the internet is flaky. And finally, bobcats have been spotted in Northeast Dallas neighborhoods. It's true. A mother bobcat and her kittens have been spotted multiple times, according to officials. Well, apparently, wild animals have child care issues too. And I guess she didn't have any relatives in the area to help her. Have a great weekend ahead. Cheers.
Thank you, Michelle. It's now time for a few announcements. First up, we're going to have Abby Dudek, Strategic Communications Manager with Tarrant County 911 District, sharing an upcoming volunteer opportunity, followed by Rosie Verdeja, Principal Attorney, Law Office of Rosa Maria Verdeja, with an update on our Richard Knight Minority Business Awards.
Howdy, everyone. So another reminder about Trash Bash next Saturday. I have more detailed information of where we're meeting, which is, if you're familiar with the big, huge Panther Island parking lot out there where the shack is located, there's those 2 big blue platforms. We're gonna be meeting at the one that's closest to the Henderson Street Bridge. There'll be coffee, there'll be breakfast tacos. Do I really need to say anything more? That should probably just bring that in. So come on out, and we also have our trail sign is up. So TRWD was great and put that out, so we actually have our section, and it is marked, and it is right behind Tarrant County College along the river, because I rode it the other day, all the way out there to see it, so which was shared on our social media. So please join us, and if you didn't sign up with the QR code, you can also just show up. If your plans change, you changed your mind, you want to bring your friends, just show up and meet us out there at 7:30 at that blue platform, all right? Great.
have a couple of exciting announcements regarding the Richard L. Knight Rotary Minority Business Award. First off, we have a date set, so pull out your phones and add this to your calendar right now. Our luncheon will be held on Friday, April 25th, 2025. And there is a QR code on the slide. We are still accepting sponsorships for the awards luncheon. All you have to do is scan the QR code, fill out a short form, and then we can invoice you later. We have levels of sponsorship starting at the $500 level. And speaking of sponsorships, can I get a drum roll, please? We are so excited to announce that for the first time ever, we have a presenting sponsor, and our presenting sponsor is Post L Group, LLC. Yes. And if you will recall, Post L Group was one of last year's winners, so this is incredible that we see the winners come back and support the program. And so I want to take a moment to invite Jeff Postel Jr. up here to say a few words. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, Rotarians. Man, I'm just excited, and you know, we all love Richard, and you know, we love Rotary. and two things, I mean, number one, Courtney and Richard and Bob Mitchell were like my initial Rotary pushers. Yeah. And so, but y'all, I still to this day, this is the most awesome day of the week because of this lunch every Friday. The food's great, but all of y'all in here are so awesome, and I just appreciate being part of the group. And so, obviously, my relationship with Richard and our bike riding, and the biggest thing here, y'all, is Richard and I, we always talked about how to uplift folks in Fort Worth via our companies and how we went about trying to hire. Thank you. And one of Richard's and our last conversations was about a young man that came to work for him, and he just couldn't get him to stick, and him and I had some of these same challenges, and so we always talked about it. So why it's important that we sponsor this event is to continue to push the legacy of what Richard's pushing, which is the growth of minority firms in Fort Worth, so those minority firms can hire our citizens of Fort Worth and create great environments to work in. And it all starts with our Rotary missions. We're just trying to create great environments for people to work in and live in here in Fort Worth. So again, thank you very much, and we really appreciate you.
With that being said, I sit on the committee, and it's my job to find some pushers. Thank you, Jeff. We have a goal, an ambitious goal of getting 100 nominations for this award. And so kind of what needs to happen is we need to get 100 nominations. Then we need to convince all of those 100 people to fill out their applications. And this is where you pushers come into play. I need some people that want to talk to minority business owners and explain to them why being in Rotary is an important part, or why they should consider being in Rotary. So once they fill out the nomination form, I need some people on a committee who are like, hey, I will go take out somebody to lunch, for coffee, invite them to a meeting, share my Rotary story, explain why they should apply for the award and eventually become a Rotary Club member. So if you're interested in being a pusher, if you like talking to people, if you like networking with people, will you come and find me and help sign up for that committee? And I will put you to good work. Equally, one of the things that I find that's so amazing is that in 2020, there were 6 minority business owners as members of Rotary. We have 60 now, of 200, if my numbers are right, but I think they're pretty close. So We need to grow that number, and I need your help. So thanks for helping me out.
Wow. Thank you, Pusher Karen. Thank you, Rosa. Thank you, Abby. And I agree. Jeff, we want to uplift our members here in our community. Thank you. Thank you so much for what you're doing. We're glad you're here and joining and becoming engaged. And everything you just shared today, that's what Rotary's about. Thank you so much. All right. Many good things are happening. As you heard, sign up. There's ways to participate. Bring your family and friends. Bring out your phones. Take a picture. Click on the QR codes. And as a member organization, we would not be here today if it was not for you, our members. Think about it. We would not be sitting here today without our members. We are a membership organization. Please give a welcome to our president-elect, Kathy Sheffield, with a first reading.
Thank you, President Rebecca. As she said, we have one first reading today, and the proposed member is Kelly Cotton. Her title is Membership Sales Manager. The company is Canyon Ranch Wellness Club and Spa. The classification is hospitality. The proposer is Ed McClin. And if there are no written objections received in the Rotary office by September 20th, this proposed member will be given a second reading and voted on by the club. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, everybody, what's this? So what does that mean we have today? We have a new blue badger. All right. Johnny Anderson, please come up here. Johnny has completed 6 acts of service. We're going to hear a bit from Johnny as he makes his way up here. He's kind of a big deal. We have plenty of time. Everybody's eating, enjoying their bread pudding. Johnny, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Now, Mr. Anderson, I'm going to replace this red badge with your blue badge. But tell us, what was your favorite act of service?
Well, my favorite act of service was sitting at the table, signing everybody in. The reason I enjoyed that is because I got to have a one-on-one with each and every one of you for about 3 weeks in a row.
Thank you. Now, tell us about your community engagement. And this is what everyone does. Red Badgers go into Blue Badgers, join committees.
The committee that I engaged with, first of all, was the Veterans Group, because I have a really big heart for veterans, being a veteran myself. But I'm really impressed by the work of the Richard Knight Minority Business Ward. I'd like to get more involved with them.
There you go. I think I heard Dunn over here. Yes, Dunn. Thank you so much, Johnny.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, thank you.
That's what it's all about, everyone. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our chairperson of the day, Lindsay Rushin, General Manager Casa Mañana, who will introduce today's program. Thank you, Ms. Lindsay. Please join us.
Thank Thank you, President Rebecca. I know I saw about 25 of you on Wednesday night that came to see Million Dollar Quartet, and I think there's a picture that exists to shame the other 75 of you that I did not see. Now, because I am a pusher as well, in a different way, and I like to really drive home the feeling of FOMO, I have brought Taylor Isaac Gray, who plays Jerry Lee Lewis, here. So those of you who saw him, a nice little reprise. For those who had not seen him Wednesday, you can still see him tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday. And he's going to kick off our panel before we let Wesley take over. Thank you, guys.
I want to get a little closer. Oh, sorry, the speaker right there. Let's fix that. Yep. All right, here we go. You shake my nerves and you rat on my brain. Too much love drives a man insane. You broke my will, but what a thrill. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. I like the love cause I thought it was funny. You came along and you moved me, honey. I changed my mind, this love is fine. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Kiss me, baby. Ooh, feels good. Hold me, baby. Well, I wanna love you like a lover should. You're fine, so kind. I wanna tell this world that you're mine. I chew my nails and I turn on my thumb. Real nervous, but it sure is fun. Come on, baby, you drive me crazy. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Lover should. You're fine, so good. I wanna tell this world that you're mine. I chew my nails and I turn on my thumb. Real nervous, but it sure is fun. Come on, baby, you drive me crazy. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Woo! Wow. Hey.
Whoa. Goodness gracious. Okay. That was amazing. Taylor Isaac Gray, thank you so much. Playing the role of Jerry Lee Lewis, 1/4 of the Million Dollar Quartet, which you can see this weekend. Another way to put it, y'all just got $250,000 worth of the Million Dollar Quartet right here. Aren't you so glad you showed up today? Yeah. But joking aside, it is a really strange affair to appraise the value of the arts and cultural experiences, like the one we all just shared, right? Often we measure the value of local arts and culture by its ancillary effects. Uh-oh, we're gonna play with this. Did I do that or did you do that? Oh, it's me, thank you, yeah. It's always been me. We measure the value of the local arts and culture by its ancillary effects, right? For example, national research shows us that 112% increase happens when a student in school experiences one or more arts programs during their academic career. That's 112% increase in their scores on standardized tests. Similarly, those same students are 20% more likely to attend college than their peers. And a great example of that happening here in Fort Worth is at I Am Terrell Academy, part of Fort Worth ISD. They've got an academy for STEM and visual and performing arts just outside of downtown. Increasingly, we've also begun to explore and understand how aesthetics impact public health, as nearly half of all U.S. medical institutions feature some form of arts programming. And they report that their belief is that exposure to art lessens hospital stays and decreases reliance on medication. And that reflects as well what you're seeing up here, that creative therapies with arts-involved interventions lessens the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms in military veterans by 30% when applied. And great work like that happens at the Art Station down on the near south side, another fantastic Fort Worth nonprofit. And if you're interested in, the many different ways that art impacts our community, that impacts our lives, we're going to be talking about that with our team at Arts Fort Worth, which is launching our inaugural Art Summit. We're calling it Arts Forward. That'll be March 29, last Saturday in March of next year, a chance for all of us to come together, this whole arts ecosystem to come together and look at the many ways that arts impacts our community, that art impacts our lives, to learn about how we can get involved and to celebrate it. And if you can't wait until March, we've got some one-pagers around here with tons of facts that we can't get through today because there's just very little time. But you can learn about how arts impact civic engagement, arts impact community building, arts impact emotional intelligence. But the thing that we often gloss over, sometimes we forget, and it's something that requires a whole panel to help me explain today, is really what we're here to talk about, how arts impact our economy. And arts is a big business. It's a major industry, arts and culture, so big that the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, the BEA, has an entire satellite dedicated to it. So a cultural, let me see the actual word here, arts and culture production satellite account. And each year they produce a study. Our most recent data that we'll talk about today is from 2022, as are all the numbers we'll talk about today. And this satellite account is looking at for-profit arts and culture activities such as Hollywood studios, Broadway theaters in New York. It's looking at not-for-profit, like our very own Casa Mañana theater here in Fort Worth, or galleries like Kinfolk House over on the east side. And it's looking at the work of sole proprietors, like our Jerry Lee Lewis, and an actor and director we'll hear from a little bit later in just a few minutes, B.J. Cleveland. It's looking at all that, and it's telling us that in 2022, the overall economic impact of arts and culture was 4.3% of our gross domestic product in this nation. That's $1.1 trillion of value added. And for contrast, just so you all have some context there, that outpaces utilities as an industry, agriculture, transportation, education. It's a major business that generates 5.2 million jobs in our country. And we can zoom in to Texas, thanks to the BEA, and we can see here that Texas arts and culture economic activity, the same measures, for-profit, not-for-profit, sole proprietors, 2.5% of our gross state product is coming from these activities, accounting for $59.3 billion and 383,066 jobs here in the Lone Star State. What the BEA can't tell us is what's going on at the county level, what's going on at the city level, and that's where the organization that I'm privileged to lead, Arts Fort Worth, has stepped in partnership with Americans for the Arts, a national organization that researches and advocates for the arts. And what we've done is, in partnership with Americans for the Arts, is we invested $10,000 and tons of staff and volunteer time to research 74 arts and culture nonprofits that are headquartered here within Fort Worth city limits, and to take an oversample, actually, of 917 audience intercept surveys from events all across Fort Worth over the course of 2022, and come up with the data that I'm very quickly going to share with you so we can get to our panelists. Altogether, our participation put us in league with 373 study regions across all 50 states and Puerto Rico. And the numbers that we find here are things that we can compare and contrast with all these different study regions. And there's great information that if you're interested, I'd love to follow up with you afterwards and share that with you. But what we found from the study is this number right here. So arts and culture nonprofits, specifically, right, we talked about the BEA, which is looking at for-profit and individuals. Our study just looked at nonprofit organizations. And nonprofit because, and I'm sorry, I'm probably getting a little feedback. Nonprofit, because nonprofits are culture bearers for our local traditions. They are our pioneers for new ways of expressing. They're also the main way that our governments in Fort Worth and around all of North America directly support arts and culture activities, is through nonprofit organizations. And what we find is when we look at these institutions, their collective impact here in Fort Worth, those 74 organizations, $507 million of direct expenditures into our local economy from them and their audiences. And that's a dollar-for-dollar count. Every dollar reported by these organizations, every dollar reported by those audiences in our intercept surveys outside of the cost of a ticket, are showing us that nonprofit arts and culture businesses, as represented by our panel up here, 507, over $500 million of economic impact in 1 year. We're going to unpack what that means a little bit, but what I will say is from our study partners in Washington, D.C., who took all this data, crunched it using M-Plan and in-and-out models built for Fort Worth and Tarrant County, they found a number of factoids, including this one right here. The number of jobs these nonprofit organizations that are supporting here in Fort Worth, Texas, is 7,000 180 jobs in the year 2022. And one of those careers belongs to none other than BJ Cleveland, actor, director, creative, who I know isn't feeling super well, so it means all the more that you're here with us today. BJ, I'd love for you to help me welcome BJ to the stage, please.
Thank you so much.
We'll do the shoulder thing, right? Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, the green chair right there. Yeah. Goodness gracious. Let me sit far away from each other, right? For for health purposes. Yeah. Hello. Hello.
Like I need it.
Right. Here, take mine. That's right. I'll swap you there.
All right.
You got it. There we go. Yep.
Hi, everybody. I'm fighting the ragweed like everybody else is. So those lovely indigenous things that we have here in Fort Worth. But thank you. Do you want me to just talk, or do you have a question for me, or do you?
So many questions.
Well, I'll tell you why I'm here, the CASA is not paying me to be here, but I am a lifelong product of the arts in Fort Worth. Getting my start at Casa Manana back in 1969, did my first professional show at Casa at age 8. Started doing the big summer musicals with Van Johnson and Ruta Lee. I know some of you are old enough to know that. If not, you need to look those names up. Playing the kid in all of those shows, and joined the Actors Equity Association, Professional Actors Union when I was 12. CASA sent me on a national tour for a year, and there went my 7th grade year of school, and came back to Fort Worth. I am a Fort Worth boy, and have continued up until now. I'll be 61 in a few months. Continue to work with CASA for now 52 years, almost 53 years. Off and on, but mostly on. Yeah, thank you. And I do it because I love it, but I have made a career of being an actor and a director in the North Texas region, and particularly in Fort Worth, Dallas area. But because of my training at Casa Manana as a resident actor, as a student, as a director, I've been able to take those talents and go across the country and perform and continue to teach, but always come back to Fort Worth. And so this is really where my heart belongs, where my family is. My great-grandparents, I got into theater which is always a big question people ask. Nobody in my family is theater-oriented, but they are all theatrical in their own way. And I take credit because my great-grandfather, excuse me if I get touched by this, but my great-grandfather and great-grandmother immigrated from Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia, coming through Ellis Island and Galveston, the Ellis Island of the South, and met in Fort Worth because my great-grandfather was a tuba player in a Wild West band that traveled the Southwest, and they went broke in Temple, Texas, and the nearest work he could get was in the stockyards at the meat packing plant in the stockyards. They met in Fort Worth. They met at the Bohemian Club in downtown Fort Worth, which is where all the immigrants met. So my grandfather, a musician in the arts, was also a little bit of a clown, met Anna, and they proceeded to have 8 children who each had 8 children, had children. And so Christmas Eve and Thanksgiving for me is about 150 to 175 people in one house. And we all get together and we all still support each other. Sunday afternoon, I have a rehearsal at 3 o'clock at the Fort Worth Sokol up on Boat Club Road to do some Czech dancing that we're gonna do for Czech National Heritage Day. But back to CASA. CASA, and I was looking at your figures on there, and what I wanna say is, yes, when you buy a ticket, yes, you are employing us, but I want you to think how far that reaches. Because let's say you're buying a $65 ticket, okay? And you see what's going on the stage and you're like, oh, those are great actors, or those are great musicians. We're not talking about the hundreds of people it takes to put on that show. The designers, the technicians, the seamstresses, the painters, the authors, the playwrights. You're talking about the box office staff. You're talking about front of house. You're talking about the custodians. You're talking about the entire team, the marketing team, the executive team. You're talking about the teachers. You're talking about the students. Then you're branching beyond all of that to what if you go have dinner before the show? You chose to go to a restaurant, usually, within the region of the Arts District or Casa Mañana, and you're paying those waiters, you're paying those cooks, you're paying those Uber drivers, you're paying for the people that work at the hotel that all of the artists are staying at across the street from Casa Mañana. Whoops, let that secret out. But, those pennies making up that ticket is divided again and again and again and again to help far-reaching people. And because one thing is successful, the next thing is successful, and the next thing is successful. That's why the arts are so important. In the state of Texas, having worked in nonprofits my whole life, I ran Theater Arlington for 26 years. Where's J.R. Labby? Are you here? Hey, girl. How are ya? She's a big star, big gridiron star. Having done that and knowing having to write these grants because the price of a ticket does not even begin to cover what it takes for you to see or for you to witness, for things to be put on. But when you're writing those grants for the state of Texas, one of the first things they say is, for a city, I'm talking about a grant for the city, not just for an arts organization, but for the city, is what is the cultural district? What do you have that benefits the city and helps the people in it? So by having an education outreach program, which CASA, I'm a product of, and has a great one year-round, not just a few classes. I'm talking there's like multiple classes every day, late into the evening for students to attend and stuff. But that is far-reaching. That goes on. They grow up, they support the arts, they attend the arts, they teach the arts, and that keeps going. So just think about where your dollar goes when you go to do that. Fort Worth was a fort. Then they built a courthouse. And then what was the next thing they did? They built saloon and dance halls, right? And then we had hotels, and then we had restaurants, okay? So today we don't have Hell's Half Acre, we have the Cultural District. And Fort Worth is booming because of it. So thank you all for your support and your continued support. When you buy a season ticket to an arts organization, i.e. Casa Mañana, that is a year-long vote of confidence that you want that arts organization to continue, and you want to see it grow and nurture other artists like me. So thank you.
Round of applause, yeah. You just answered every question I have on this page. So.
And now I'll do a number. Yeah. Okay, no.
But one thing I want to show you real fast is, to your point, this is an example from 2022. There was a national study of local theater companies across the entire country, and this was the breakdown of their revenues. And what you're saying here, right, that 28% right there on the upper left quadrant is the amount of earned revenue. That's the ticket sales, that's the subscriptions, that's the education program if there's a fee for that, which many times there isn't because it's grant supported. And then you look around, this is all the charitable support, and keep in mind this is 2022, so there was a tremendous amount of federal support coming through Save Our Stages, or the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant, which was thankfully co-sponsored by our very own Senator Cornyn. So a tremendous amount of federal support that year, and most years as a much smaller number. You'll also see a very large amount of foundation support. In that year, our foundations were spending more than their minimum 5% distribution in order to support and jumpstart our arts industries and really all nonprofits. But you look across this and you see a pretty good breakdown of what you're describing, right? It takes a lot of community support to make these things happen, but the benefits are that $507 million. That benefits are the education impacts, the health impacts that we're seeing from this. If you also look on here, you see a sliver here, a yellow sliver for corporation, and admittedly, corporate support, and Fort Worth is a good example of this, has decreased over the past 30 years. One place where it hasn't decreased is with a champion like the bank, PNC Bank, who is well represented today by Amber Scanlon. Please help me welcome to the stage, Amber Scanlon. That's okay.
My dad was a banker, so thank you. Yes, appreciate it.
Awesome. Here, take my mic. And Amber, tell us a little bit about why PNC supports the arts, and what you've learned from their support and your time being a part of that.
Sure. I don't know if I'm going to be as entertaining, and I have zero musical.
You're gorgeous. Who cares?
Thank you. Thank you. Great questions, and I'll try to be succinct as possible, but for many reasons. First, thank you for having me here today. What a wonderful group of people, and I'm very admiring. I see my friend Dion over here. Love you. What a wonderful group of people, and thank you for having me. So PNC Bank, if y'all don't know, we expanded to North Texas about 8 years ago, and I'm going to come back to that because that is part of why I'm going to talk to you about the importance of investing in arts and culture for corporate expansions and relocations and what that does for the economy of a city. So that being said, we have been one of the largest banks in the country, founded in 1865. We're about the 5th or 6th largest bank in the country, depending on how you measure it. We expanded to North Texas about 8 years ago, which is when I moved here. While I don't live in Fort Worth, I live in Tarrant County, I live in South Lake, and so I have the benefit of enjoying arts and culture in our communities across North Texas, and we're never leaving. It's wonderful. So that being said, arts and culture has been integral to PNC's cultural fabric, if you will, internal to the company essentially for as long as PNC has been around. And honestly, it has to do with the economics of arts and culture. Wesley has talked to you in pie charts and slivers, and you've seen that. And I will geek out with you on that every single day of the week because it's one of my favorite topics.
So many more slides, don't worry.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Injected in my veins as I love it. But that being said, the importance of arts and culture to our economy. So we talked about jobs, we talked about tickets. It's definitely more than jobs, though, and I'm just going to use PNC as an example. When large companies are looking for corporate headquarters, which happens all the time in North Texas because it's literally quite the best place to live and work and play and stay. They're looking for things for their employees. They're looking for an amazing school district. They are looking for, will our employees enjoy working here? They're obviously looking for a business-friendly environment, which we love to have here in the state of Texas. But they're also looking for where and how will our employees enjoy living here, and what does that look like? Can they see Broadway? Can they see a play? Can their children enroll in classes? What are we doing culturally here in the state and in our region? And that, arts and culture plays such a huge part of that. And there's a fabled tale in another city across the Trinity that I won't mention about Boeing, which you may or may not have heard. And I don't know how much truth there is to this or not, but we use the story all the time, so I'm going to retell it. Boeing was looking for a corporate headquarters, and some executive's wife was like, well, there's nowhere to see Broadway. So they chose Chicago instead. And if what happened since then? Well, other unnamed city across the Trinity said, well, we're going to build the largest contiguous arts district in the country. Texas is going to Texas. And so that's what happened. And so now across this region and belovedly in Fort Worth, you can enjoy anything you want to enjoy arts and culture wise. There's Broadway, there's theater, there's all sorts of performance. There's, you name it, it's here. And how lucky are we so that it is a tool in the economic toolbox of our city. And Wesley and I are constantly hatching plans about some things that maybe we will or will not mention, but ways the city and county and others can utilize the economic tools in the toolbox to support arts and culture for those reasons. So it's definitely jobs and it's definitely ticket sales, but it's everything else, and it's here for Fort Worth to take. As this city just has everything to offer everyone else. It's the movie industry too, which we've all seen booming here in Fort Worth, and so as people come to know Fort Worth for the city that it is and how amazing it is, arts and culture are going to play a huge place in that. Back to why PNC cares. If, arts and culture are for everybody. They are inclusive. There is something for everybody. And if our community is successful, PNC is going to be successful. And we are so much of a believer in the importance of the economics of arts and culture. That is why we have such a heavy investment in them. We've been very lucky to work with our friends at Bass Hall and present Broadway at the Bass. If you don't have your season membership, please get it. But it's absolutely one of our favorite places. Dion actually had us out a couple weeks ago. She hosted performance campus CEOs from across the country here in beautiful Fort Worth, Texas. They came to Bass Hall, and we were able to visit with some of them. Main Street Fort Worth Arts Festival, which I know many of you are involved with and support. We're lucky to be the presenting sponsor. Again, think about it. It's one of the largest juried art shows in the country, thanks to our friends at Downtown Fort Worth, Inc. And they bring thousands and thousands of people, not only from Fort Worth, not only from North Texas, but across the country here to, music, food, entertainment, supporting artists, and not only national artists, but local artists. And think of the commerce that flows through that weekend here in Fort Worth, Texas. So those are just two very small examples. I could bore you to tears with all the things we do in the arts, and I will at any time you guys are interested. But that's just a small example of how excited we get about the economics of arts and culture. And that's why we love it so much and why we do it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, well, please applaud. Yeah. You mentioned those thousands of people, and like we saw in the economic, neither of you can really see this, but everyone else can see very clearly on the slide up there, the economic impact breaks down between direct spending from the organizations and direct spending from those audiences, right? Those thousands and thousands of people walking down the street at Main Street. That breaks down on average to about $43, almost $44 per person per event outside of the cost of the ticket, if there is one to be there. Main Street, of course, is free, so no cost there. And that breaks down into a couple categories, as you'd imagine, like BJ mentioned, food, dining. There's also shopping, either for souvenirs or maybe you're getting your outfit together to go out. And a big one as well is transportation, getting to and from the event. But what we find that's maybe not surprising, but very interesting, is when we look at visitors from outside of Tarrant County, which we're calling non-local here, that number bumps up to $57.10 per person per event. So those people are coming in, they're maybe spending a little more on lodging, they're maybe spending a little more on food because they're having an experience. What we found from the study is 80-something% of those individuals, I think 83% is what that says, told us, those non-local individuals said, they are here in Fort Worth because of this arts event that I'm attending. And on top of that, nearly 74% of those same individuals who traveled from outside of Fort Worth, outside of Tarrant County, said they would have gone somewhere else and spent their $57.10 if that event was somewhere else, right? If the Nutcracker wasn't in Fort Worth, but it was in somewhere across the I-30, that $57.10 would be a sales tax collection for our best friends next door. So with that, we've got some really interesting data on what it means to be a local experiencer of these things and a visitor. And we see that that breaks down to about 1 in 4 people at each art event happening in Fort Worth is actually coming from outside of Tarrant County. What that means is when we have a great amount of sales tax generated from those sales, these nonprofit arts organizations, these organizations that are typically associated with no taxes, are actually generating a tremendous amount of sales tax, as well as the organizations themselves. If they're, for example, selling art, that's an unrelated business income tax expense, so that gets taxed as well. And they're, of course, paying payroll taxes for their many, many employees, those 7,000 people we talked about. That accounts for $75.7 million of revenue, taxable revenue, recollected by local, state. Yes, we're getting there. And we got to get our final guest up here, so yes. So, to make my very important point very quick, $10.9 million goes back to city and county government. And when you think about the $1.7 million investment that comes from those entities each year that supports these activities, we see a 500% return on investment. And a person who knows that very well, the tourism piece, the public and private piece, is past President Bob Jameson, who's coming up here because he knows our time is short. Thank you, Bob.
Yes, sir.
Bob, I'm going to let Amber hand you her microphone.
He did.
And there's so many things you could say because you know the most about all these things. But I'm going to ask you a different question because you also, in addition to being the president and CEO of Visit Fort Worth, our convention visitor bureau, one of the best in North America, are also a major board member for many, many different nonprofits, many of which were represented in this study. Why do you spend so much of your time and energy and mental power on supporting these groups?
Well, first of all, I want to relieve you from a little bit of pressure because I negotiated with President Rebecca that we could finish at 1:30.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
So sit back.
Grab another bread pudding. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell what I hope is a quick story because everything has to be quick at this point. But I moved here in Fort Worth to work at the Worthington Hotel in 1985 in January. And in May of 1985, we were working very closely with the Clyburn International Piano Competition, which was holding its 7th international competition in Fort Worth. I was riding on the elevator, and there were 2 guests in the elevator with me. And one was this woman who was dressed very nicely, and I knew immediately she was headed to some part of the Clyburn competition somewhere, wherever it was being held. There was no Bass Hall at the time, but somewhere, the Kennedy Theater or whatever. Alongside her was another woman who was wearing a t-shirt and jeans, and she had a little case in her hand. And so the woman dressed very nicely turned to her, making conversation in the elevator ride, and said, is that what's in your case? What instrument do you play? And she says, it's my pool cue. Now, we did have a billiards competition going on also in the hotel, but here is this woman, Italian by the sound of her accent, as I recall, traveled halfway around the world to be here to participate in this remarkable and, a part of what is Fort Worth's cultural scene, just one slice of Fort Worth's cultural scene. And so immediately I was getting a sense of the diversity of the visitor in Fort Worth back in 1985. Well, that is only richer and greater and bigger today. Now, why am I involved in boards like yours is, not only am I employed both at the hotel and now with Visit Fort Worth, with an eye towards encouraging people from other places to come here and have been telling the story of what Fort Worth's cultural scene, what that entertainment experience is, what the various art forms are, whether they're performance or visual, on and on and on. But I also live here. And, as we are encouraging people to come from other places, we do that because we know that the economic impact that visitation has enriches the offerings, whether they're dining or artistic, cultural experiences, enriches those opportunities for all of us that live here. And so, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do for work, but I'm doing myself a favor at the same time.
That's fantastic. And I know Rebecca's walking up here, so I will leave everyone with this slide and just say, everyone on the stage, everyone in this room, all those organizations that represent the study were successful because of great support, great volunteers, great leadership from community members in this room and around outside these walls. So thank you all. Keep supporting the arts. It has a major impact on our community. And with that, thank you so much, President Rebecca, for giving us 3 more minutes.
Absolutely.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for being here. Would you be able to stay for a few moments to answer some questions from anyone?
Yes.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you. First off, thank you. And what you do for our community and add to the culture is just, we can't thank you enough. All of you, we have a special role you're all playing. Thank you. We do have a gift for you for taking the time to be here today. We have something in your name. We have given Rotary Polio Plus a contribution in your name, and we just appreciate it. And thank you. I have these bags I will pass to Wesley, and he can help me right here. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Again, let's show our warm welcome to everyone. I know it's past 1, everyone, and thank you all for still being here. We appreciate it. We have a few closing announcements. Thank you again to our sponsor, Casa Mañana. Also to our Laurel sponsor, past Rotarian Gordon Boswell, who left this in his legacy. Every week you see a beautiful floral here. Also, take a picture. I think we have a slide with all of our events coming up that we heard about earlier. The District Gala, Trash Bash, also the International Committee. There's a list of items on your tables. If you would like to offer some of these, October 1st is their event at Hop-In. Next week, you don't want to miss Susan and Jessica Miller of MG2 Ventures. They'll be also discussing mental health initiatives. I think that's important to all of us here. Thank you for choosing to be here today. We look forward to seeing you next week. Our meeting is adjourned. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Okay. Thanks so much. Oh, that's great. Thank you.